Good morning and welcome to Bold Business. I'm David Grasso from GenFK and I'm joined by Selena Hill, digital editor at Black Enterprise. And we're kicking off this episode with a lively policy debate with our guests, Justin Dent from GenFK and Scottie Hughes from the national spokeswoman for the Committee to Defend the President. That's a mouthful, Scottie.
Absolutely, say it 3 times fast.
So welcome, folks. Are you ready to debate one another? The rules are simple. Your responses are to be kept as short as possible. Today's topic is healthcare reform in the latest legislation that the Senate is expected to vote on in the near future. The Better Care bill is an attempt to dismantle Obamacare and follows bills like the American Health Care Act out of the House of Representatives. There's a lot in this bill to discuss, of course. Healthcare is something that touches every single American. Recent legislation proposed includes repealing the individual mandate, reducing Obamacare subsidies, and radically cutting Medicaid. The Congressional Budget Office has released their forecast, and they conclude that 22 million people would end up uninsured over the next decade. The bill would only save the federal government about $35 billion, a tiny fraction of our $3.65 trillion budget. So my question for the panel is very simple. Do you think that this is a better bill? Let's start with Justin.
Just give me the hard question right off the bat.
It's a simple one-word answer. One-word answer.
Keep your answers as short as possible. Why not? No. Patently no. I think there's a need for reform, and this starts to look at structural reform. But the way that it's done it right now, it needs to go back to the drawing table. They're trying to push something that simply isn't viable. The CBO, came out with the score, and you can say what you will about the CBO, but ultimately that's what we're going to base our research, and they're pretty on point most of the time. And you've already seen Susan Collins start to defect, and you can't really push something that people are not open to and not willing to look at like this, because I don't even know what to say. It's baffling.
Scottie, how about you?
Yes, it is better. But I will say this, my lovely colleague here does bring up some very good points. I agree. Is it a perfect bill? Absolutely not. Is it better than what we have? And even, let's just take it from a business perspective. What is it doing? The number one thing that we have seen the Affordable Health Care Act do to business is actually hurt and limit small business, and the fact that they had this mandate that businesses had to give their employees insurance or suffer the penalty. That was extremely strangling for small business. And we say, if you talk to a lot of small business owners, they did not hire people or put them in full-time positions for this reason alone. So from a business perspective, this actually takes it down to 0, takes the penalty down for both corporate as well as individual mandate down to 0. So from that perspective alone, makes this a better bill.
Selena.
Yeah, so talking about hurting businesses, this hurts so many Americans, especially the most vulnerable ones in our country. I'm talking about the disabled, low-income people. The fact that it not only guts the expansion that happened under Obamacare, the expansion of Medicaid, but it's gutting Medicaid itself. And we know that Republicans for decades have been trying to gut Medicaid. This will cut $834 billion from Medicaid. And if people do not, studies show if people do not have access to treatment, to health care, then they die. So I frankly don't understand how Republicans can try to pass a bill that would hurt and disenfranchise so many people.
Well, while I appreciate the fear-mongering talking points that you just gave, the truth of the situation is the CBO actually said that with a smile on my face. The truth is you still have to pay for it, and I agree. And we have to realize there's a fundamental concept that we probably disagree on. I believe that health care is a privilege. You probably believe health care is a right. That right there says all our debate is going to be focused on going forward. I do not. I have a heart. I do not want to see people dying in the streets. But guess what? People are dying in the streets right now under the current situation, and it's not the lower class. It's not the higher class. It is the middle class who cannot get insurance right now because it's not being offered or it's unaffordable.
But I want to press a point here, and I'm acting as a neutral party here. The bill, according to the CBO, says it won't really save us a lot of money. So all of these savings, where are they going to come from?
Once again, we're going to talk about, first of all, we had a broken system, we need reform. But the current situation is already saying that we should have over 20 million people. We only have 10.3 million people on the exchanges right now. The healthcare insurance companies are pulling out. All the Democrats want to do is put us on a path towards single payer system like our friends in Canada and England have. And we have shown that those systems are not good. That's not what America has. But if you think people are going to be dying in the streets, this current system has caused people to be dying in the streets. And it's the middle class, the voters, the electorate, the taxpayers are the ones who cannot afford or get health insurance right now because of this current system.
Yeah, no, so, the thing is, we're talking about, people dying in the the streets, and these cuts. But we also need to look at the fact that it cuts taxes for the richest Americans, the people who aren't struggling at all. So to really put working class Americans and middle class Americans in this predicament and hurt them while we're helping the richest people in our society is not something that Americans want. Justin?
No, Scottie, I hear your point on small business. I completely agree that the Affordable Health Care Act has been a disaster when it comes to small businesses, and it was not designed with employers in mind. And that all policy should take that into account, because ultimately we want to put more Americans to work, and we need to look at the role that employers play in that. My concern with this bill is that while making small concessions for small business owners who, to be quite honest, don't have enough time to really look at this, to vet it, to talk to their employees and to talk to their counsel to see how it will affect them, because we're trying to push this through by Friday instead of actually having a real dialogue and conversation on it. One, they won't even know until it's passed. Two, we're going to compromise what we do know, right, which is that the poorest Americans and elderly Americans are going to be put in a more compromising position. And I hear you on saying that I don't think health care is a right. I disagree. I think that it's something that as a country we should work to provide for all people. But I don't think that we should cram down a policy on a tight timeline without taking the time to really evaluate how it's going to affect all parties, small business included. And I think that we need to also admit, coming from millennials, we're all young people in this room, the fact of the matter is under this, the healthcare premiums for our generation are going to decrease, right? That's something that is worth, having a conversation about and talking about, because we talk a lot about Medicaid and Medicare, which, mostly go to older Americans. It is, we do need to have the dialogue about how it affects our generation. At the same time, we need more time for that dialogue.
Scottie, can you have the last word, because we're running out of time here?
Well, I hate to have the last word. The key is, and you talk about millennials, the Affordable Health Care Act was put on the backs of millennials. That's hard. Nobody ever wants to leave the next generation for the older ones. The key about this new program is actually, the government is not supposed to be a hammock. It's supposed to be a safety net for those that are hurting, not a hammock. Unfortunately, the government has made themselves the entitlement beneficiary, and we all know competition is better, more competition is better, more government is worse.
Well, thank you guys for a lovely panel. Very lively, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So next up, we have our Bookstar segment. Now, Bookstar is a website for book lovers and much more. We're joined by Jeff Rosenblum, who is the author of Friction, a book that explains what separates brands that evoke passion from others that bring complaints. Welcome, Jeff.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. So it's very good to have you. So what's the full title of your book, first of all?
It's Friction, Passion Brands in the Age of Disruption.
Absolutely. So tell us more. What do you mean by the fact that you're saying some brands and advertising companies actually disrupt, I guess, consumers' lives rather than trying to engage them?
Yeah. Well, let's take it from the top, right? Virtually every industry around the globe has been completely disrupted by technology. And emerging from this is a small set of passion brands. These are the brands that absolutely dominate the competition. They don't just have customers, they don't just have loyal customers, they have brand evangelists. They have people who actively go out of their way to proselytize for a brand. They're at the bar, they're at the restaurant, they're around the campfire, and they're telling all their friends how great brands are. And to answer your question, it's because some brands are built simply by interrupting people over and over and over again. You're trying to watch your favorite TV show, you're trying to watch your favorite sports game, and you just keep getting interrupted. And then, digital came along, it changed everything, right? And they just took all these interruptions and ported them online. So these passion brands are being built by fighting friction.
So what's the new way of doing things? Great book, by the way. I read it. I took a Sunday rather to read it. And what I found interesting is that your daughter doesn't even know what commercials are. You mentioned that in the book.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Right. So that story is, we interviewed all these great CEOs and Harvard professors, and we conducted all this neuroscience, and we did this big meta-analysis. But one day I had a hangover, right? And I went downstairs, and my daughter's at this great age where when I'm hungover, I get to do what she wants to do, which is watch cartoons. So we put on her favorite cartoon ever, which is Wonder Woman, which is actually what I grew up on. But it's this weird, variable isolation research, because what happened is I'm watching the same exact show that she watches, but I watched it on TV and she watches it on Netflix. So at one point, Wonder Woman is getting her butt kicked. And all of a sudden, the screen turns black, turns it around. Next thing you know, Wonder Woman is winning this battle. And I stopped at that point. I'm no longer hungover. All of a sudden, I went from dad to researcher. And I'm like, wait a second, did you notice that? And she's like, yeah, Wonder Woman's kicking some butt. I'm like, no. Did you notice the screen go black? And she's like, no, just put the cartoon back on. I'm like, no, did you see what just happened? She's like, I did not. Just put the cartoon back on. But what happened was that black screen was where the advertisements used to be. It's the same exact show, but she gets to watch it on demand. So she's being raised without all of these interruptions. She's being raised without all this corporate disruption. Now, she's about 10 years old. She's not going to wake up in 10 years after having an advanced education, after having her own income, and say, hey, it's okay to interrupt me right now. I've lived 10 years, 20 years without any interruptions. Tell your story through 30-second TV ads, right? There has to be a better way. And that better way is fighting friction. It's about empowering people. It's about improving their lives one small step at a time.
So what is the new model? So this is a billion-dollar industry. People pay to interrupt our lives. You said we get interrupted with 5,000 messages a day, and that we just learn to tune them out. So there's a bunch of people's livelihoods in a whole industry. You're here to discredit a whole industry.
Well, I work in this industry, right? I literally
Saying that book looks like it came out of advertising.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? I work in advertising. I've spent almost 3 decades in advertising. This is not about the death of advertising. That false eulogy has been written before. This is about recognizing that people want more from brands than just interruptions. We're asking advertising to do too much. So we simply need to take a portion of that budget and put it towards fighting friction. Friction is anything that gets in the way of what you want to accomplish in life. It's anything that gets in the way of your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations, and even your mundane day-to-day goals. And when brands fight friction, they build brand evangelists. And these evangelists carry the message better than advertising ever could.
So which brands are actually doing this very well? Which brands are fighting friction rather than disrupting our lives?
It tends to be younger startup brands, not necessarily small companies. Some of them are small, some of them are huge, right?
Can you name some off the bat?
Yeah, sure. Uber is one that comes to mind because it's so interesting because they're so far from perfect and they're all
very far from perfect as we're learning.
Under crisis, matter of fact.
Under massive crisis, right? CEO is out, but they've become a part of our social fabric.
Absolutely.
None of us wants to live without Uber. Maybe Lyft will come and take their place, but they're not ready quite yet, right? So you've got brands like Uber, you've got brands like Yeti that quite simply all they make are coolers, but they build this incredible story and they share their stories online and they've turned their customers into evangelists. You've got Patagonia, which is a company that every single way that they interact with customers, they help protect the environment by educating people, right? You've got brands like Sweetgreen, which is very popular here in New York City.
Ate it for lunch yesterday.
Right? Delicious, right? Did you wait online?
No, I didn't. I ordered it online.
That's right. See, that's my point.
And I got $3 off for that.
Nice, because you shared it with a friend.
Exactly.
They turned you into a digitally enabled brand evangelist. You don't even have to be on the show. Now you're an evangelist. You're telling everybody that's watching the show.
It's an amazing product.
It's an amazing product. But they fight macro friction by having absolutely delicious, organic, healthy food. But it's those little things that really turn them into a passion brand. The fact that they've got a line around the corner with people waiting for that delicious food, that's macro friction. But the fact that you can, in 2 clicks on the app, order the product, 1 more click, customize it, 1 more click, share it with a friend, 1 more click, get $3 off, that's micro friction. And Sweetgreens is one of those brands that fights both macro and micro friction, and they're a passion brand. They dominate the competition.
Right.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We're great. Thank you.
So anyway, next we'd like to welcome Sarah Berger from Bankrate. Sarah is also known as the Cashlorette, and she's here to talk about a new Bankrate survey about Americans' dining habits. Welcome, Sarah.
Welcome. So you have some interesting statistics in the book. It says that the average millennial dines at a restaurant or buys takeout food 5 times per week, and about 29% of millennials say they buy coffee 3 times per week. So what does that really say about our generation spending habits?
I think that younger millennials are falling victim to these common financial vices. They're not cutting back. Maybe they struggle with self-control. And they're really just making these small purchases that they probably think are minimal, but actually can amount to a lot in the long run.
Yeah, so
That's
buying a
true.
coffee every day at, one of the big chains that shall remain nameless, the Star, that adds up. $5 a day.
Right, exactly. I'm not perfect either. I actually walked in with the Starbucks, so I totally get it. I'm a younger millennial. There's so many temptations out there, especially with apps now. You can order your food, you can have it delivered right to your doorstep. So there's definitely temptation out there. But I really think it's important for millennials to put themselves on a strict budget when it comes to these expenses. Allocate a certain dollar amount to spend per week or per month on that specific expense. And once you're done, you're done. And that can really make a big difference in the future of your finances.
So another interesting statistic, 54% of younger millennials eat out 3 times per week. Do you think that millennials are eating out more so? Why do you think we're eating out more so as opposed to older generations, which tended to, I think, cook more and prepare food for the week and then bring that food for lunch rather than going out and spending money at work for lunch?
Right. So I definitely think that it's an age thing. Younger people, maybe they don't have that family structure yet. They don't have a table to come home to every night and someone to eat with. They don't have to spend money on children. So they have that extra cash to spend on themselves, so they're not spending it wisely. I don't really want to, blame millennials too much. I think that they're doing a fairly good job when it comes to their finances and that this is really a cost associated with being young. That being said, I also think that there's temptation out there, like with Seamless. How easy is it to
It's
just order?
so amazing. Seamless is so great. For
Absolutely.
those who don't know, Seamless is an app where you can order takeout here in New York City and it comes right to you
Yeah.
in 30 minutes. Yeah, from any restaurant.
Yeah, it's amazing, but it also can get very
Expensive.
Right.
We have a question from the audience. Advice on easily tracking those expensive phone apps, see how it adds up.
Right, exactly. There are tons of apps out there, budgeting apps that can help you. There's Mint, there's Level Money. I actually just like to follow the 50-30-20 rule, which is essentially, you're only spending 30% of your income on things that you don't need. So 50% should go towards your fixed expenses, 30% spend as you please, and 20% you put in savings or paying down debt. So that kind of, makes you prioritize a bit what you are spending that 30% of your income on. I also like traditional envelope budgeting. You put that allocated dollar amount. Say I put myself on a budget for $100 for bars. Put that $100 in an envelope labeled alcohol and only pull from that when you go out. And then you'll kind of visually see, I only have $20 left to spend this month, and you'll hopefully automatically start cutting back a bit.
Yeah, in the survey, it said 51% of people ages 21 through 26 typically go to a bar once a week.
Right, exactly. And
We're bar flies.
I think a lot of, when you socialize, when you're dating, a lot of these things happen at a bar. So it can be hard.
Do you think that once millennials get a little older, become a little more stable when it comes to their income and develop families, that we will fall into those same spending habits that our parents currently have? Or do you think that we'll probably maintain this lifestyle through our 30s, 40s, and 50s?
I'm optimistic that we'll start cutting back. You can kind of already see it. Our survey broke it down by younger millennials and older millennials, and I thought it was really interesting that 51% of younger millennials go to a bar at least once a week, but that number drops to 42% of older millennials.
Okay.
So you're already kind of seeing those older millennials staying in and saving money. I'm 24. I'm already kind of there, I feel like.
Oh, I'm an older millennial.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the spectrum, then we're both older millennials.
So that's definitely positive to see.
Definitely. So it kind of feels like this is almost normal, right? The fact that we're younger, we have bigger disposable income, and we're spending it on things that, we like to do because we don't have as many responsibilities. So is this normal, or should we be raising some alarm around this issue here?
It is a bit concerning that the average millennial eats out 5 times a week. That's pretty high.
Even when it's cheap takeout food like Chipotle
Right.
and whatnot.
Yeah, because you get into that habit, and that's not a good habit to have. You really want to cook at home and make
It's
it
also
fun.
healthier, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's also
absolutely.
healthier. Make it fun. Meal prep with your friends on Sundays. Incorporate a glass of wine. Whatever you need to do to actually save
That
money.
part of the budget then. Yeah.
Budget the wine in as well,
Yeah,
definitely.
discount wine. But yeah, I would definitely that is a bit concerning. But I'm optimistic that millennials will start to kind of grow out of this and hopefully start practicing a little bit better spending habits.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Next, we have John Kapetaneas joining us. He's an ABC News producer and journalist, but he's not here to talk about that. He's here to talk about how he paid off more than $100,000. That's right, $100,000, Selena.
That's a lot of money.
In student debt and credit card debt in only 2 years. His story has made waves in the media, and he will talk about his debt-destroying journey. Welcome.
Welcome.
Destroying journey. That's setting a bar.
Well, I don't know how you paid off all that debt in 2 years. Did you live under a bridge?
How'd you do it?
Sometimes I think about that too. Yeah, it's like,
I mean, you seem well-dressed and you seem well-fed. I mean, how did you do it?
well, it was around the time when I finished my master's degree in journalism, and most people don't think about journalists were going to be raking in the big bucks. But when I
Oh, for sure.
I never went into it for that reason. But when I graduated and I saw that first student loan bill hit my desk, and it's $90,000, and I'm like,
And
this is
the
going to be a
interest rate,
problem.
what was it, John? The interest
The
on-
interest rate at the times I had all federal loans. It was 6.8% for federal
Yikes.
unsubsidized loans, and 7.9% for this nasty little thing called Grad Plus loans, which is not even that bad. Fortunately, I didn't have any private loans. I had some credit card debt, which was the interest on was probably around 20% or so. But all of those numbers just kind of meshed itself into a big mess, and I didn't even pay attention. All I just saw was bottom line, you're screwed. And it was I was really fortunate though at that time. I read this blog by this guy named Joe Mahalik. It's called No More Harvard Debt. And this guy, he paid off $90,000, which was the exact same amount of student loan debt that I had, in a year by going on this student loan crucible. Basically, he cut spending everywhere, increased his earnings as much as he could. He was, like driving a petty cart, and ended up paying back all of his loans in a year. And for me, for someone, I was a journalist, I knew I had this huge debt burden, and I didn't know I was going to pay it off, but I knew by looking at this guy's story, okay, you know what? If this guy could do it, why can't I do it? And so over the course of the next couple years, I started taking on what I would call these financial disciplines that every financial guru in history will tell you is important. Increase your earnings and decrease your costs. So I was a freelance journalist living in Manhattan, making $28,000 a year. And I knew that had to change. So within a year's time, I ended up working, for a number of different places, a number of different networks and shows. I would work, some weeks during the holidays, 100 hours a week, overnight shifts. And in the course of a year, brought my spending from my earnings from $28,000 a year to over six figures. And then from there, I had to get all my costs down. So I went from living in Murray Hill to moving in with my mom in Connecticut and commuting 5 hours round trip a day, because that was going to save me 75% on my fixed costs, rent, living in New York City. So from that point, I was able to plow 70, 80, 90% of my earnings a month into my student loans. Now, at the cost of not having a life whatsoever, but at the
Were
end
you
of the day-
miserable?
Oh my goodness.
Miserable is a strong word.
Survived.
Challenged is probably where I would go with it. But yeah, it was definitely difficult. It was definitely a challenge, and it's not something that I would recommend everyone do. Just put yourself in this tough spot for 2 years just to pay off your debt. There's definitely I saw actually right before I came here this John Wooden quote that was like, everything in life in moderation. I was like, oh, that would have been nice to know a few years ago.
Well, in the long run, it was only 2 years of your life, right? So that's going to be, you're still pretty young, but like in the spectrum of things, that's like a small fraction, but it was a hard 2 years. And the way I'm thinking about it is that's extremely difficult. And you had a safety net. You had the opportunity to go back home and live rent free. Right. Not every young person or student graduating has that opportunity as well. Right. What would you tell students, high school students who are about to go to college, about student debt and how to avoid this journey?
Right. And I think, though, that there's an important distinction to make there between a student that's about to go to college and somebody who has graduated and has debt. Because someone who has graduated, has debt, is going to have a different repayment journey than me, because they have different resources, different skills, different abilities to make money, and they're also going to be starting off with, they might not be able to, they might have a family, they might not be able to live rent free or be able to do some of the things that I did. So everyone's journey is going to be different. But if you're going to, if I were to talk to a 17-year-old right now, I would say, you have to consider your long-term financial planning from a student loan perspective. Well, then it all comes down to ROI. And, for me,
Return on investment.
Yes, return on investment.
Absolutely.
And how important it is when you're choosing what school you're going to go to, what you're going to study, and how you're planning out the next 4 years of your financial future. Are you going to work while you're in school? Are you going to, take internships, unpaid or paid? Those things are all going to factor in. If you're going to, like I went to NYU, if you go to NYU and you study, something like journalism versus something like mechanical engineering, the finances there are different.
Very different. Yes.
And it's really important to think about, over the course of a 10-year period, what are your potential earnings going to be and what are your costs going to be? And I think that, particularly when I graduated, I had a $1,300 a month student loan and credit card bill, that can hit you like a shockwave. So if, you're 17 and you're thinking about, maybe don't go necessarily to the most expensive school you could possibly go to, or maybe try studying for a more challenging major, and pursue your passion on the side or as a minor. I think that these are all things that should be a consideration when you're thinking about student debt and what you're going to do long term.
Well, people forget that the 40% of student debt is for graduate school.
Right.
And a lot of those very, very high balances are for graduate school. So before you take that on, it's important to sit down and make sure that the finances work.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And now, based on your experience, did this affect your thought on how government should or be trying to lower college tuition?
20 seconds, John, because we're running out of time.
20 seconds. Okay. Yeah, so it's 80% of student loans, about $1 trillion out of $1.4 trillion, is federal student loans. And so that service, there are so many people in this country that would not be able to afford to go to college without the federal government. So yes, it is important that not only student loans are made available, but that they are affordable and that students understand them. Now, I think that you shouldn't end up obviously in $110,000 in debt like me, but I would never discourage anyone from going to college. If you have the opportunity, you should. Just always consider the numbers and what your personal financial future is going to be based on what you study and what you learn and what you end up taking out.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us, John.
Thank you,
Guys,
John.
I appreciate it.
Next up, we have Kristin Merrick. She runs a family-owned business, O'Keefe Financial Partners, which is affiliated with Raymond James and helps clients create financial solutions. Kristin is a Wall Street trader turned advisor and is here to talk about financial empowerment and the importance of investing and how to create a budget and stick to it. Welcome, Kristin.
Hi, Kristin.
Thank you, guys. Thank
So
you.
stay on a budget. I mean, you just saw John. I mean,
That is a brilliant message, by the way, that he and I cannot tell you how often I run into this subject of student loans. So I think what he's done is remarkable, and I think it takes a lot of discipline and it takes a lot of focus to do it, but part of budgeting, part of life is making sure that you are integrating your student loans into your budget. Otherwise, it will swallow you whole. It really will.
I think that a lot of people, especially recent graduates, don't feel that they can really invest and don't feel like they can ever get to a place of financial empowerment because of student loan debt and because it's so heavy and because, this is not something that was typical for past generations. This is something that is really new for us. And it's like we're struggling. I personally think John's story was amazing, but it's alarming. The fact that this is what it takes to get an education in this country.
I agree. And to his point, understanding what you're getting into on the front end is really important. But also, if you come out of college and you've got debt, the most important thing you can do is get a hold of it. Understanding your loans is like the number one most important thing.
they're very complicated.
Very complicated, and most people don't understand them or don't even give them any attention. So understanding what you owe over what period of time, what your interest rates are, that's part one. Getting yourself on a schedule that's, again, not going to keep you from eating, right? You have to be able to.
John took it to a bit of an extreme.
I actually
eating 2.5 hours.
I just said to him, "Did you have any fun?" And he said, "No." I said, "You had no fun." So I think that's the most crucial part of debt is making sure you understand your debt and making sure that you can handle it on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis. But there are ways to save and there are ways to budget without and still having some fun, right? And I think that's the most important part. I always talk quite a bit about what I call forced savings. Forced savings is this concept of you get paid your paycheck, maybe it's once a month, twice a month. And every single time you get paid, you funnel a little piece out of there and you run it into a bank account that's maybe separate from your checking account. That way, when you go to the ATM, you don't see it. It's gone somewhere else. Somebody else is watching it for you. And when you need it, you have to go access it. And it makes it a little bit more difficult to access. I think the idea of forced savings is that you can then take that savings that you've put aside and you can delineate it towards different things, different goals that you have. And once it reaches to a certain point, that's where you start investing.
So a lot of your work is about the gender gap and the gender retirement gap. Can you tell us a little bit about that, the basics?
Right. So the basics are this. Women, unfortunately, have a few more headwinds than men when it comes to...
we die early.
Well, you do just a little bit earlier, not that much earlier.
About 5 years, 3
yes,
years,
just a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
So the important thing about understanding, I would say, first is the gender retirement gap, as I call it. If you have two recent college grads, in order for these two recent college grads, a man and a woman, to achieve the same goal at retirement, a man has to save 10% of his salary, while the woman has to save 18% of her salary. There's three very widely cited reasons. One is the gender pay gap. Women make 72 cents on the dollar. Professional women, 72 cents on the dollar of every man. Second is women are in the workforce less for fewer years, 29 years versus 38 years. Lots of reasons for that. They go out of work to raise babies, to take care of sick parents, what have you. Part three is that women are more risk averse and they have generally more cash in their portfolios over time. Cash in your portfolio over time has a massive impact on performance. My reasoning, my largely cited reason, is that women have a tendency to put their priorities below everyone, below everyone else's. So they're focused on everybody else's problems and everybody else's things, their careers, their kids, their husbands, their whatever. And then at the end, they're like, oh, I haven't paid any attention to my finances. And this is a very, very big problem that I find with professional women in general. So what ends up happening over time is women end up having they have less amount of money to retire on. And to your point, they live longer.
Right. And you know what? It's so funny. On the earlier segment, we were talking about Trump Care 3.0, which is trying to pass and how it would affect cut Medicaid so much. And I was reading how this would dramatically affect women because we tend to be the caretakers for our parents more often. And if Medicaid takes this massive slash, then that financial burden is going to fall on us even more. Knowing that, financially, things could become even harder for professional women. What advice would you give working women, such as myself, who are millennial age, about saving and just preparing for the future?
Yes, save early and often. So back to my point about this forced saving.
Is that like vote early and often?
Yes, vote early and often. Okay, save early and often. If everyone could put $100 away every single month into an investment account starting at the age of 23 for the rest of their life, you would have a lovely, beautiful nest egg. And the beauty of investing is my favorite subject, compound interest. Compound interest is magic math. Einstein called it the eighth wonder of the world, right? And compound interest is interest on interest. It is a beautiful thing as long as you were the recipient of that interest and not the payer
You're not on the wrong end of that,
right?
yeah.
So making sure you don't have credit card debt or student debt that's compounding and working against you, but making sure instead that you're taking your money and investing it into the market over the long term. This is the most crucial thing about making sure that you have some money left over.
Well, Kristin, we're out of time, but thank you so much for joining
Thank
us.
you. It was great.
It looks
Thank
like
you
you'll
for
have to
having me.
exchange information with Selena because she has
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
Next on Bold Business, we welcome a guest that I've known for 20 years, and I'm not even that old, Selena.
Sure.
Just in case you wanted to know. McDonald is the host of Talking Real Money, which is heard in Seattle and around the country as a podcast. He's also the publisher of the Real Investing Journal and the education director of Vestory, a fee-only registered investment advisory. He's also here to talk about getting millennials started with savings and long-term retirement investing. Welcome, Don.
Welcome.
Good to see you. Good to see you for
Hi,
the
nice
first
to
time.
meet you.
And good to see you again.
Yeah, well, I
Definitely.
grew up with your children, so I've
Absolutely.
known you for a long time.
I'm not a millennial, obviously, but I am the father of millennials.
Yes, you
Oh,
are.
okay.
Yeah, 3 of them.
I'm the one who's trying to give them lessons on things.
So what are these lessons being imparted on our generation?
Not as much as they should be, but I'm trying. And that's my goal. I mean, truly my personal goal, even though I own an investment advisory firm and we work with high net worth clients, my passion is to try to get people in general, but particularly millennials, to start investing. It's so important. And here's the thing. Investing has evolved to the point where it's so easy now. It appears complicated, and that's in large part because, well, most of the investment advising industry has a vested interest in making it complicated. But really, it requires knowing 2 words and 4 letters.
Okay.
And we're going to nail it with 2 words and 4 letters. And I get no money from one of these, but the previous guest was talking about how you need to force yourself to save.
Yeah.
There's a great way to force yourself to save and never, ever feel it. It is a wonderful program and app called Acorns. Extraordinary way to force savings. I discovered it about 1.5 years ago and just set up my accounts and started putting it rounds up all of your purchases, and you don't notice it, but it doesn't just round them up and put them in a savings account, which is horrible. It rounds them up and puts them into a massively diversified portfolio of ETFs. So you get aggressive growth funds, you get small company funds, you get value funds, you get international funds. You can build this wonderful portfolio for retirement and not even feel it.
Wow.
Talk about, I mean, you don't even have to think about it.
No.
It happens automatically.
So tell us, Don, you're here to tell us what a fiduciary is, and I think that's something that's kind of lost in the industry of investing.
Almost every single financial advisor in America does not have to act as a fiduciary. And a fiduciary simply means doing what is right for the client, always being required to act in a client's best interest. Now, while many will tell you they are a fiduciary, most of the industry is actually dual registered. So you've got folks who are stockbrokers or broker-dealers or registered representatives or insurance agents, and in those capacities, they don't have to act as a fiduciary. If they're a registered investment advisor, in that capacity, they have to act as a fiduciary. So the trick is, if you are going to work with an advisor, ask them, are you always required to act as my fiduciary? In fact, we have a advisor interview form at talkingrealmoney.com that's free. You can download it. And if you go to an advisor, make them fill it out and sign that they're a fiduciary, because otherwise they can sell you things that are merely suitable for you. For example, you could have 2 identical mutual funds, one with a 5 3/4% commission, the other with no commission, the one with a 1% fee every year, and the other with 10 points, 0.10% like Vanguard, and they can sell you the more expensive fund, even though the other would be better for you.
Wow. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about today, you come with a lot of financial advice, but you've also been very active. We're both from the town of Celebration, Florida, which, if people don't know, is the Disney town that was developed near Disney World in Orlando, Florida, about 20
In fact, I just saw your folks a couple of days ago over at the tavern. We bump into each other all the time.
We all know each other intensely. We're all starting to marry each other. We've lived in this town forever. But you've taken a lot of your financial knowledge and parlayed that into civic action. You're on the community development district. What possessed you to become so involved with managing the town and specifically the finances of our town?
Well, the big part of the reason is because I honestly believe that I love this name, that you've got to go out and be bold. You've got to do things like get involved in your community, and you can't just sit around and complain about it. It irks me when I hear everyone in town, and you live there, complaining about this and that, and my wife, who is on the CROA board, I'm on the community development district.
Husband and wife team who's very involved in our town politics.
She's always telling people, I've got a committee you can serve on. Instead of just griping, come do something. Come make it better. And I decided a long time ago I had to put my efforts where my mouth was. And do some things.
Do you think that has that actually helped more people in your community become more engaged?
I don't know that I have, but I think my wife has, only because she's so good at it.
Right.
She's the personable one in the family. I'm the.
But, being involved, and, even though we're a very affluent community, we have a lot of problems, and people don't realize that they can really make a difference at the local level and how complicated it is to really run a town.
Yeah, it's very complicated to run a town, and it's really, and by the way, Celebration's not all affluent either. There are, $100,000 condos, which good luck finding one of those anywhere in the city here. But it's a complicated mix of ideas. We have a very large Hispanic population. population, as you're aware. We have a lot of seniors who are in desperate need of some help, so we have programs for them.
International community.
We have an international community. We have the snowbirds. We have the year-rounders. There's a lot of different people you have to appease and keep happy. And then the other thing you have to do is try to find a way to keep the community looking great so that home prices stay high.
And also the finances. It's not easy.
It's very complicated. A lot of complicated, and Disney didn't make it easy. They set up a lot of different entities, and so it was a complicated process.
So what keeps your community together? What brings you guys together?
I think it's the sense of community, the fact that we try to get people involved. We have community-wide events. It's a town of only about 10,000 people, so it's not really difficult, but we have community-wide events. We engage people. They show up at meetings. And then we just tend to get together. People move to a town like that because they want to be with other people. They don't want to live in a shell.
So what do you say to people who are dissatisfied with their local politics who want to make a difference?
Go do something. It's very simple. And you don't have to run for office. There are committees. Every government has
And a lot of it's
advisory
financial,
committees.
isn't it? Running money, running a budget.
But there are other things too. If you don't have financial savvy, I end up being treasurers all the time. I don't know why, but
you know a lot about money.
Right. I think money is your thing.
There are a lot of things you can get involved in.
Absolutely.
So, and one other thing I wanted to mention, if it's okay.
Sure.
Because I'm
running out of time, but go
really
ahead.
big on literacy. If your viewers will go to realinvestingjournal.com, I will give them a year of my magazine that costs $25 if they just put in Bold TV.
Absolutely.
There we go. You heard
$25.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, great
Thank
deal.
you so much, Don.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next up on Bold Business, we have Barbara Clarke Ruiz and her business partner, Shirley Gentry. Now, they're from BCSWIRL, a fashion design consulting firm specializing in active wear. Barbara's clients in the past have included Adidas, Venus Williams, Nike, Feli, and New Balance. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank
you. It's great to be here.
Yes, good morning. It's very nice to have you guys here. So tell us a little bit more about the company, BCSWIRL.
So BCSWIRL is an activewear firm that I started some 20 years ago, and I work for a lot of big clients, and Nike, Adidas, New Balance. I mean, it's a truckload of.
And your career got started at Adidas.
As a matter of fact, yes.
In Germany, right?
Yeah, Adidas hired me right out of college.
I remember from the last time.
Right, that's
I got
right.
to meet
This
you.
is my
Yes.
follow-up visit because
Yes.
the last time I was here, I was design director for 11 by Venus Williams, and I had just left Venus, and so I went on this quest to make a list of all the companies I wanted to start. So as a result, I've started 2 new companies. I'm still doing activewear. That's what I do by trade. That's what I enjoy, and I've extended that to the BCSWIRL group, which is where my business partner Shirley Gentry comes in, because within the BCSWIRL group, we are going to be working with companies about doing branding, about doing social media and marketing, product development, consumer research, and Shirley comes out of the area of product development for many big retailers.
Like Barbara, 20 plus years experience across the women's accessory product development group. Worked for big companies like Macy's, Kohl's. I got my start at Saks Fifth Avenue doing women's European American couture, meeting all the old, industry experts at the time. And so then I met Barbara a couple of months ago, and we were actually just getting to know each other and talking about our path and our vision and what are things that we want to do for our next step. And then before you know it, we were doing all these together.
Started 2 companies.
Wow.
So one of them is called Yum Yum Pet Products.
I see all the products.
Yeah,
right
like
here.
all the little
Yes.
products like around here. We do a line of premium freeze-dried dog treats. I love dogs, have always loved dogs. And
A specific breed or.
well, I have 2 little Yorkies, and they're so little, like I couldn't find product that wouldn't make them sick. So I put that on my list. I said, to start a dog company one day. So that day came, and we've been selling these treats now for about 8 months, and we're in several hotels. That when dogs check in, they get our dog treats.
We just did the World Dog Expo first United States.
Our first.
I'm sure that was
And we
very
got it.
entertaining.
That
It
was
was
very
actually
entertaining. It was a lot of fun.
entertaining. And it was great for us because we made a lot of fantastic contacts, and it gave us, really a good vision for how to really extend our long-term business strategy. So that was fantastic. But it truly is amazing the love and the care and the focus people have for their pets. So
Right.
It's amazing.
So now, Barbara, like I understand that after you graduated from school, you started working for Adidas, and as you mentioned, you worked for Venus Williams, for Nike, and you've designed so much that you've actually seen your designs across the world. Like people wear them all the time to this day. When and how, what made you decide that now is the time for me to leave this industry or this business and to start my own, especially because you've been so successful and you were there for so long?
Well, I haven't left it. I've been a consultant for 20-something years now. So with having my own company, I have always had the ability to work on a lot of different projects. And that's what interests me most as a consultant because, I work for a company for a certain amount of time and the contract finishes and I go on to the next company. And it's always just something unique and different. Creating these startups are no different. It's like, you come up with an idea, you have a vision, you come up with an idea, you plan your strategy, you plan your packaging, you plan your product. It's all a process. So it's the same. So I haven't left. The BCSWIRL group is really the extension of that, where we are taking that a step further and utilizing the experience that we've had with growing our businesses. Because we also have Odessa Josie, which is our clothing line. We do a lot of women's dresses and jewelry. And this is actually, I'm going to just lay this down, but this is actually one of the bracelets. I'm actually wearing one. It's our wrap bracelet, and this is like one of our part of my next collection, our tunics.
Coming into the stores in the next week or so.
In another,
on our
yes.
site.
Wow.
So we sell online at our website, OdessaJosieStyle.com, and these cute little bracelets come in these great bags, and it's a wonderful little gift.
So Shirley, I have a question for you. Actually,
Sure.
the retail landscape is changing a lot. How do you,
Absolutely.
ladies, navigate the changing retail landscape?
Yeah, I think that obviously online is the avenue for everyone today. And so I think the biggest thing is really understanding once you identify who you are, what your core customer is, it's really how do you speak to her from a social media perspective. And it's both social media, but it's also the direct conversation. So, as we are in our communities, we're talking about the brand, we're getting them to know the products that we have out there. So it's the community reach and the online reach. The retail landscape continues to evolve because today people have so many options. So, why go into the store when you can navigate first online? And that's where we have to make sure that we are so appealing and that our products really stand for really what our brand philosophy is. So,
Right. And because the market, like you said, is so oversaturated with different brands and products, what makes, I guess, your lines stand out?
Yeah, we have a question from the audience that's similar to Selena's. How do you promote yourself?
Well, we literally just started this Memorial Day. We launched it on Memorial Day, and we had a few little glitches on with our site. We break that all out, and so sales have been consistent. It's great. I think the differentiator for us is that women, we never want to see ourselves duplicated. We go to an event, we don't want to see somebody in our same outfit, and so we make it our business to not carry thousands of pieces, right? So we want to carry a limited number of pieces. Typically, it's anywhere from 20 to 30 pieces.
Wow.
Very limited.
That's very limited.
We want to offer more product.
So
right?
it's kind of the fast fashion model?
it's not so much fast. It's fast in that we want to be able to react quickly to what's happening, but we also are doing it where we can do it locally. So where we can, most of our garments are produced within the local area, and we try to do small production runs. So again, to Barbara says, you're giving yourself a bit of being unique in that there's not a lot of the pieces moving around. So where we have to be fast is that we have to keep things in the cycle all the time because we are carrying a limited amount of assortment. So, and when we built the business, we built it as a retail component, but there's also another side to the business that we are building out where it comes to building opportunities for companies that are looking for fundraising. You know, fundraising for companies, and especially smaller companies and nonprofit agencies is always very difficult getting funds, you know, to be able to commit to your services. So part of what we want to do is build product that then we can offer an organization to use as their fundraising mechanism. So that's the other side of the business that we do.
So this bracelet would be one, and it's got charms on it that we could have your company engraved on our charms and make it really special. Again, it comes in this great little bag, and it's a great price point. It's $19.99 for this. This is a great little gift, and we've had people, for Memorial Day. I mean, we had people who bought 5 and 6 of these bracelets, because they just make great gifts. So,
They do.
Well,
Absolutely.
ladies, we're out of time, but we loved having you, of course, and we'll see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
So next, we're joined by LeBeau. He's one of the founders of SingularDTV, the world's first entertainment economy free of intermediaries for artists. They've set out to empower artists with a set of powerful tools for them to create and manage their projects. Welcome, Zach.
Selena, hi David, how are you?
We're very good. Nice to have you here.
Good to be here, thank you.
So how is your company providing a fundamentally different product?
So what we're doing is we're building an entertainment economy with blockchain technology and decentralized computing. Two things that are at the fringes of computer science that really have only come about in the last decade. And they're starting to gain a little bit more mainstream popularity now, but
blockchain technology is so hard to explain, for a basic audience. For an audience that's unfamiliar with, blockchain technology. Can you explain it?
Well, blockchain technology really is all about utilizing decentralized computing. So decentralized computing is pretty much the exact opposite of what we have now, where we have centralization. The internet is built off of these siloed, centralized databases that the internet may seem decentralized, but it's not. It's really all of these centralized, siloed databases connected to each other, but they don't share information. It's one of the reasons why, for example, if you are selling on Amazon, and you've been doing so for 5 or 6 years, you have a history, you have ratings, you have reviews, people know who you are. But you can't take that to eBay if you just start your account there. You can't take your reputation and all these ratings and your history with you, because right now the way that the internet is engineered, the way software systems are engineered, there's no convergence of network and data. Decentralized computing changes all that. It takes those hierarchical top-down control pyramid structures that we have now, where there's very few at the top, and basically over a large number of people at the bottom, and it horizontalizes that power. It redistributes it.
So this platform allows artists to kind of bypass the middlemen?
Yeah, what it does is there's no gatekeepers that end up controlling, suppressing, or oppressing expression. And then there are no intermediaries at all as well that end up extracting value from that expression.
Oh, wow. So how did you even come up with this concept?
Wow, okay. 1997, David Bowie launched Bowie bonds. Are you familiar with those? What he did was he basically sold himself on Wall Street. He took all of his future royalties and he put them in the form of Bowie bonds, so that the people could have a piece of David Bowie, the artist. Now, that was pretty much mostly for Wall Street and those people in Wall Street. But what blockchain technology and decentralized computing allows now is really for any artist to emulate that model and to reach their audience, not only from the development of their projects, but when they distribute them as well.
So they're selling themselves directly to the market?
It's, we're building 11 different applications. Each application does something slightly different to complement a user experience. One of those, actually what we're described often as, is a mixture between a peer-to-peer iTunes with a decentralized Kickstarter and a never-before-seen rights management gateway.
Wow.
So there's lots of moving parts, but that's part of the decentralized experience. And what we're creating, again, is this entertainment economy. So it's an alternative. We're not trying to change Hollywood or anything like that. We're building a completely different alternative because there are so many independent entertainers out there, producers, entertainment investors, filmmakers, who can't find a model that works for them.
That's a huge problem right now. A lot of artists are struggling right now with present business models, aren't they?
Yes, because there's a very elaborate system of gatekeepers and intermediaries out there that end up taking all of that value from them, so it becomes almost impossible for the average artist to profit, to make a living, to make a career out of their expression.
That's why a lot of them are choosing to remain independent. Do you think that's one of the reasons?
There is a certain dignity and self-respect in remaining independent to a certain point, but really that's why SingularDTV exists. We're building those applications so that they can find how to create their own business models in a decentralized economy.
Absolutely, that is fascinating.
Well, it's hard to imagine what you guys are doing, but that usually means that's a good idea.
Well, you know what? We actually brought demo artists in from around the world a couple weeks ago, and we filmed them demoing our applications. So in a couple months, when our first applications launch, we're going to be showing the world exactly how to use everything. It's not going to be as mystifying as it is now. We're going to be very transparent and show everyone how to use what we've built.
Well, Zach, thank you so much for joining
you.
us. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So last but certainly not least, we'd like to welcome Chaz Greene to Bold Business. He's the founder of Trill Tea, a brand that emphasizes being true to yourself. And he has some tea for David and I. Welcome, Chaz.
How you doing, guys?
Hey, what's up, Chaz?
Hey.
So you really
So-
have some tea for us?
I do.
That is awesome because I'm a tea drinker. I'm not a coffee drinker. So
Yeah.
I'm very happy about
I
this.
like both. But I'll definitely try this.
Okay, so what is this?
That's so far goji.
This smells so good.
Actually, I'm sorry. No, that's nuts and apples. My apologies.
I'm so glad you told me that because I'm allergic to nuts.
So let's switch it up. No problem.
Let's switch it up before I break out and I can't afford an EpiPen. So
So that's okay. So that's blueberry matcha that you have over there. That's actually our best seller. It does.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot different than most people traditionally when they think about matcha. Now, that's so far goji. That's pear, melons, and goji berries. And so far goji is actually based off of the artist Drake, the hip hop artist Drake. So Far Gone, his first mixtape. So we have So Far Goji to go in line with that. And a lot of what we try to do is we try to embrace hip hop culture, but then also like really expand to understanding how businesses are using hip hop culture, but changing that where we're really creating. So rather than what you may see where a big business will hire the cool person, we're creating the cool brand and we're just cutting out the middleman now. So now with Trill Tea, we're looking to just really modernize what you've seen from a tea company and even go postmodern.
So how did you get this idea? How did you get into tea? Were you always an avid tea drinker?
No, that's the great thing. I actually wasn't because I never actually liked tea. And one day I was in my old job and I could not, it was just, I was really sick and all we had was Lipton. And a lot of people don't understand that Lipton is actually just tea dust. It's not even really tea leaves. So it's really nasty because the tea leaves need to expand for full flavor. And I kind of looked into the industry. I was like, I think I could make something better. I think I can create something that would not only taste great, but also inspire me. And over the course of time, I looked into it. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I have to do it in a way that would that I could relate to and I'd have a competitive advantage. And for me, I just, I grew up on culture. I grew up on, like I tell people all the time, my mom, she blessed me by like telling me about Tupac. She put me on the Tupac songs and she put me onto a lot of stuff. And I wanted to embrace the culture and show that we can really create and build and compete at the highest level with the culture that we've grown up on.
So this is fascinating, like hence the name Trill, because I was just like Trill Tea, so it's an infusion of tea with hip hop, and that's something that I haven't really seen or embraced. And me as an avid hip hop fan and avid tea drinker, I guess you're really bringing those two cultures together. Absolutely. Now, how are you guys also setting up shop like brick and mortars where people can like drink this tea, maybe listen to some music?
Okay, so to start, I don't want to do that. We're fully self-funded, so I'm paying for it myself. We're we're online right now. We're in a few stores in the city and cafes. One is called The Bean. What I'm looking to do, my end goal is to create the hip hop version of Red Bull and compete at that level where we're actually really running the brand as a media company. So when we're creating, we can actually create a movie where Trill Tea is product placed, but the storyline is just a really great storyline that fits culture and fits, where we're going in regards to business, in regards to media, and also in regards to bringing tea into the 21st century and beyond.
Kind of like the author that we had on earlier, Jeff Rosenblum, was talking about brand creation is so different now because you're trying to create, you're trying to create a customer base that's excited about your product instead of trying to interrupt them with an ad about your product.
Absolutely. I think what my goal is also to have that rawness too. I tell people all the time that nowadays you can bring somebody from Silicon Valley and bring them in the same room with someone who has a completely opposite perspective from them, and you can create magic. And that's kind of my goal long term. It's kind of like bringing in like the PayPal Mafia with the ASAP Mob, which is like a rapper group. Bring those two people together and see what you can create. And that's my goal of Trill Tea, is bring two worlds together and meld them seamlessly. And
that is so ambitious. I love it.
Well, I'm not a hip hop fan, but your tea is very good.
Yeah. There are no sweeteners in this tea.
No, that one doesn't. No.
So this is the way tea is supposed to taste.
Well, yes, exactly. exactly. Well, it depends.
It's naturally sweet.
Yeah, that one is, the blueberry matcha is.
Mine is pretty sweet too. And the thing is, like, I'm weaning myself away from sugar. So I used to use 6 bags of sugar, like little bags, and now I could definitely drink this tea by itself, which I think is definitely a plus.
I appreciate
So we're running out of time here, but what will you tell people if they have that entrepreneurial itch like you had? What's your advice?
Just do it. Just do it. The best thing you can do is just like fail quick. Just like Mark Zuckerberg says, fail quick and often, or fail as fast as you can, whatever he says. But as fast as you can, just work, learn every day.
Thank you so much for
Thank you,
coming on,
Chaz.
and thank you for the tea.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Bold Business. Be sure to catch Carrie Sheffield and Clay Aiken on Bold TV this Friday at 10 a.m. And of course, Selena and I will be back not next week, but the week after. We're taking a week off for July 4th.
Okay.
See you soon.